Herzlich willkommen, liebe Zuschauer, zu einer weiteren Folge von Im Auge des Bruders mit Scott Ritter, hier auf unserem YouTube-Kanal Gegenpol. Mein Name ist Monique Stegemann und in dieser Woche geht es um folgende Themen. Krieg im Nahen Osten. Welche Strategie verfolgt Israel bei seiner Bodenoffensive im Gazastreifen? Bundesverteidigungsminister Boris Pistorius will Deutschland wieder kriegstüchtig machen. Und Fettleibigkeit und verfehlte Rekrutierungsziele beim US-Militär. Können die USA überhaupt noch als Weltgendarm auftreten? Hallo Scott, schön, dass du dir wieder die Zeit genommen hast. Wie geht's dir?
Well, thank you.
Das freut mich. Scott, wie gewohnt springen wir direkt in die erste Frage, denn der Krieg im Nahen Osten geht weiter. Israel rückt mit Panzern und Bodentruppen in den Gazastreifen vor. Wie analysierst du das Vorgehen der israelischen Armee? Was will sie erreichen und wie siehst du die massive US-Unterstützung für Israel und die gleichzeitige Aufrüstung der US-Stützpunkte in der Region?
Well, Israel's in a very difficult situation because, they suffered a humiliating defeat on October 7th. And there are both military and political reasons behind their current offensive into Gaza. Militarily, Israel has tasked itself with the job of defeating Hamas's military capability so that an event like October 7th will never happen again. And this has a political dimension too, because the leadership that failed the Israeli people on October 7th is still in power today. Benjamin Netanyahu was the prime minister of a government that allowed Hamas to attack, that enabled Hamas to attack. The heads of the military, the heads of intelligence failed to detect the Hamas preparations and failed to have sufficient military power on hand to repel this. And these are all the same people now who are screaming at the top of their lungs that they have to go into Gaza in order to defeat Hamas. So there's a political aspect to this as well, because what Israel is asking of itself is almost a mission impossible. The Israeli ground incursions so far have just tickled the edge of the Hamas defenses. And as they penetrate deeper, they are going to suffer more casualties, and these casualties will become crippling in nature. Hamas, we don't know the extent to which Israel's bombing campaign has impacted Hamas, but we do know that Hamas had planned for this in advance, and that Hamas's tunnel network is reinforced, it's deep, and it should be able to withstand most, if not all, of the bombardment that Israel has subjected it to, which means that, Hamas still retains considerable military capabilities that Israel are going to find increasingly, difficult, if not impossible, to overcome. The other danger in this is, in order to continue to press forward, Israel is going to have to increase the scope and scale of the violence that's already being inflicted on the Palestinian people. We saw an attack yesterday against a refugee camp, the Jabaria refugee camp, ostensibly to kill a single Hamas leader. They've sacrificed hundreds of Palestinians. This is an equation that's unacceptable everywhere in the world. There's no nation on the planet except Israel who says, oh, that's okay, that's a good trade. So Israel's alienating the world and creating the real possibility for the intervention of outside parties. We've already seen the Houthi rebels in Yemen start firing missiles against Israel. On Friday, Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, is going to give an address which could very well be a declaration of war against Israel, in which case Israel is in deep trouble. So I think the Israelis have gotten themselves into a bind here, boxed themselves into a corner where no matter which way they turn, they're going to be looking military disaster in the face. The United States has said that we will be there for Israel, but we're already paying a price. Because of our support for Israel, we've been linked to Israel, and therefore we are being subjected to attacks in Syria and Iraq. and these attacks will continue. We do not have the ability to prevent the various militia groups in Syria and Iraq from attacking our bases. And, while we can retaliate, all we do is further enrage these forces. And again, the United States could very well be looking strategic defeat in the face, where we may be compelled to withdraw from Syria and Iraq because we can no longer sustain our forces there. And what we're seeing here is that Israel's overreaction to the horrific events of October 7th have positioned both Israel and the United States to suffer strategic defeats in the Middle East that'll have repercussions for years to come.
Vergangenes Wochenende tauchte in den israelischen Medien ein angeblich geleaktes Geheimdienstdokument auf. Demnach solle Israel planen, die gesamte Bevölkerung des Gazastreifens schrittweise zunächst in den Süden Gazas zu vertreiben und dann nach Ägypten auf die Sinai-Halbinsel umzusiedeln. Die Authentizität des Dokuments ist umstritten. In kritischen israelischen Medien wird unter anderem diskutiert, ob es sich womöglich um einen Testballon handelt, um die Stimmung der israelischen Bevölkerung zu dem Vorhaben zu testen. Was sagst du dazu? Und wenn es tatsächlich authentisch ist, lässt sich so ein Vorhaben überhaupt bewältigen? Was müsste Israel tun, um 2 Millionen Menschen aus dem Gazastreifen zu vertreiben?
Well, I'm in no position to speak to the authenticity of the document. I'm a prisoner to the same source as everybody else is, and I've been following the debate about it. I personally think it's a trial balloon, something that has been released to gauge not just Israeli domestic support, but international reaction. It's curious how the more Israel progresses in terms of these extreme policies towards the Palestinians, the more they start to take on the characteristic of Nazi Germany. I mean, the compelled expulsion of millions of people, and it's a war crime. You can't do it, but Israel's floating a balloon. It's like me, writing a letter to the police. Hey, what would you think if I just decided to go out and do a mass shooting? How do you feel about that? Well, Scott, that would be a crime, and you have us a little worried about talking about it. Of course I do, because it's criminal to even think such thoughts. Here, Israel's saying, what if we just push 2 million people out of Gaza? What do you think? It's a crime against humanity. It's a war crime. So that tells you that something's fundamentally wrong with Israel as it's currently constructed, because to even think that you can get away with floating a trial balloon of this nature implies that there's not too much sound thinking taking place in Israel today when it comes to dealing with the Palestinians and Hamas. It shows the level of desperation that has gripped the Israeli people and the Israeli body politic today.
Lass uns nochmal über die Unterstützung Israels durch die USA sprechen. Kann Israel mit Hilfe der USA die Hamas besiegen?
To say defeating Hamas, what does that mean? To kill every Hamas fighter that's physically present in Gaza? Sure, why not? I mean, if you have the time and you have an infinite supply of weaponry and you're willing to take the casualties, yeah, you can accomplish that. But Hamas is more than just a physical, military structure. It's an ideology of resistance, and Israel will never defeat that. Hamas ideology is already taken root around the world. People aren't just having pro-Palestinian rallies, they're having pro-Hamas rallies. Hamas has won the political fight, the public relations fight. So this is already a strategic defeat for Israel. And understand this, that no matter where these Palestinians who are in Gaza end up, whether they're shoved out of Gaza or they stay in Gaza, they will provide a perpetual source of recruitment for future military Hamas organizational structures. So, Israel cannot defeat Hamas. Just straight up statement of fact.
Schauen wir nach Deutschland. Bundesverteidigungsminister Boris Pistorius forderte am Wochenende in einem Interview mit dem ZDF, dass Deutschland wieder kriegstüchtig werden müsse. Er verwies auf die Gefahr von Kriegen innerhalb Europas, An diesen Gedanken müsse sich die deutsche Bevölkerung seiner Meinung nach gewöhnen. Als einzigen Ausweg sieht er die Aufrüstung der Bundeswehr und der deutschen Gesellschaft. Was sagst du zu diesen Aussagen? Muss Deutschland wieder kriegstüchtig werden? Kann Deutschland wieder kriegstüchtig werden?
Let me answer it this way. There's no reason for Germany to become fit for war. Russia doesn't pose a threat to Germany. The United States, doesn't pose a threat to Germany. Where is this threat that Germany speaks of? Why is there a need for Germany to build a new German army? This is an absurdity in the extreme, and it's dangerous. Let me just remind the Germans that twice last century, Germany became a militarized entity, and combined that with economic power and nationalist tendencies, inflicted world war. And twice Germany was defeated. 3 times the charm, I guess. So you want to do it again? Go ahead. I don't care. I'm not German. Build your army. Somebody's going to destroy it. We've destroyed it twice. The Russians destroyed it, helped destroy it once. We'll do it again. You're not invincible. You're a pathetic, middle-sized European country with a shrinking economy. You want to militarize German society? Try and get the German people to fall in love with Germany again. Okay, ask yourself right now, how many Germans gladly put the flag of Germany on their shoulder and waltz around and say, I am German, I am proud. This whole European Union experiment that you've gone through has diluted what it means to be a German. And if you try to rapidly restore this notion of German nationalism, it'll be done in the worst possible way, the ugliest form, the kind that says we are German racial supremacists. We believe in the supremacy of the German race. We must remove all the immigrants. We must become anti-immigrant. Gosh, you're sounding an awful lot like what Germany sounded like in the 1930s. Is this really the path you want to go down to? Why don't you try fixing your economy? Why don't you try normalizing relations with Russia? For the price of one Panzer division, and let me tell you what will happen to your Panzer division. Just go take a look at all those Leopard tanks that are burning on the plains in Ukraine. That's the future of all of Germany's armed forces. You're not a strong nation. You're not as powerful as you think. Don't go opening the history books and looking at the Wehrmacht as it ran through France and as it did this and did that. Because in the end of the day, they all were killed, surrendered. They were defeated. That's the future of Germany if you choose the military path. You're not that big. You're not that strong. You're not that good. And your people aren't what they used to be. Okay? You don't have a bunch of lean, mean, fighting machines out there. You've been eating a lot of schnitzel, a lot of bratwurst. You're not doing too much exercise. You don't know how to fight. You don't want to fight. So this is stupidity in the extreme. I don't know why the defense minister feels he has to speak this way. The smartest thing he could do is take the price of one Panzer division and divert that money to diplomacy. Fire your foreign minister, who's an embarrassment to the world. Put in somebody who genuinely understands diplomacy and begin the process of reaching out to Russians. You have to restore trust and confidence in the Russians. Angela Merkel lied to them. You do know that, right, Germany? You do know that your chancellor lied to Russia. The Minsk Accords were serious about this. You weren't serious about it. So you're a nation of liars because what your leader does reflects on all of you. Why don't you just sit back, worry about fixing your economy, worry about stabilizing your internal domestic situation. And the best way to do that is make peace with the people who used to sell you cheap gas. You remember that, don't you? The day and age when you can roll into winter and turn on your heat and have comfort and go to work. And because you had a job, because the factories were open, because, gosh, you had that cheap Russian gas coming in so they could afford to stay open to produce those nice German cars. And you got that nice salary and went on those nice, the old days. Those days are gone, guys, because of people like your defense minister. Fire him, fire Scholz, fire Baerbock, fire them all. Get rid of them. Replace them with people who care about Germany.
Im gleichen Interview ließ das ZDF auch den ehemaligen Oberbefehlshaber der US-Armee in Europa, Ben Hodges, zu Wort kommen. Hodges regte sich auf, er sei es leid, von den Deutschen das nie wieder zu hören. Seiner Meinung nach müsse Deutschland militärisch das nie wieder durchsetzen. Ist das nicht paradox? Wie soll nie wieder Krieg mit Kriegsmethoden erreicht werden? Und sind es nicht vor allem die USA, die die Kriegsgefahr weltweit und auch über Europa beschwören?
I think Ben Hodges is frustrated that he was never a real wartime commander. He didn't get to be General Patton. I'm pretty sure he grew up as a little boy reading about General Patton, and he wanted to lead tank divisions up against the Russians or the Germans, and they wanted to fight the big battles. And he's frustrated that he was the commander of American forces in Europe, and he didn't get a chance to do that. He got to go kick some Serbians around. He got to go enforce some things in Bosnia, but it wasn't real war, right, Ben? You're a little upset about that, Ben, aren't you? Because right now you're having fantasies. You're having old man fantasies. You're trying to create something that shouldn't ever exist again. Never again means never again, Ben. It means never again. That means Germany will never again go down that path. And now you're saying that Germany must go down that path. Why? Why must Germany go down that path? To fulfill your fantasy of conflict, general conflict with the Russians? It's time for the Germans to grow up and learn how to hit the off switch. Look, I'll give you an example. For all you Germans out there who are pretty pissed off at me right now, hit the off switch. Turn it off. You have a right to do that. You don't like what I'm saying? Turn it off. Listen to someone else. You're not being compelled to listen to me. When Ben Hodges speaks, if you don't like what he's saying, turn it off. You don't have to listen to what he's saying. I will say this. I'm articulating a stance that speaks of peace and prosperity. Wow, that's a nice concept, isn't it? Ben Hodges wants you to bankrupt your already bankrupt nation, to build a military that will never have the strength. You Germans do know. I just want to remind all the Germans out there that what Russia did in the last year. They mobilized 300,000 reserves. Let's see Germany mobilize 300,000 guys. Go, Germany. Can't do it. But wait, there's more, guys. 300,000 volunteers. Those just aren't reserves. These are volunteers, Russian men, Russian boys who said, I want to fight against Ukraine, against the collective West. So that's 600,000 that just went into the special military operation. But there's more. In addition to that, Putin signed off on the expansion of the Russian army from 900,000 to 1.5 million. That's an additional 600,000 troops. That's 1.2 million troops mobilized. And it doesn't mean get men out there in uniforms. The Russians built tanks, good tanks, better than your Leopard tanks, which are burning right now in Ukraine. Russia built real tanks. They're equipping these forces with uniforms, tanks, military machine, ammunition. You know, the ammunition that Russia was going to run out of, but they just have never any supply because their defense industry's working, functioning. Russia has become a nightmare for NATO. NATO can't win a war against Russia. The good news is Russia doesn't want to fight a war against NATO. Look at the cause and effect relationship between NATO expansion and Russian expansion. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, in this case, we know what came first. It was the NATO chicken that laid the egg that led to the Russian mobilization. If NATO had not expanded, Russia would have a force of 900,000. And if NATO would behave responsibly, Russia could have dropped those troops down too, because Russia has no expansionistic goals. But when NATO says that they're going to build a 300,000 strong rapid response force for the sole purpose of reinforcing the eastern flank so that they can stand up to Russia, Russia's asked to ask the question, why? Are you coming after me? Are you going to attack me? If you are, then I'm going to beat you, which means I will assemble sufficient force to crush your pathetic NATO armies. This is real. Ben Hodges is grossly irresponsible. First of all, he's not a Russian expert. It's high time that Europe stopped listening to people who talk about Russia, but they're not Russian experts. You might want to start listening to the Russian experts, not because you have to be indoctrinated with Putinology and become a pro-Putin guy. No, you can even be anti-Russian, but listen to Russian experts so that you have, fact-based analysis that makes sense. There's no need to be talking about, remobilization of the German military if there's no threat from Russia. And I'm telling you right now, there's no threat from Russia. Whatever Russia is doing today is because NATO prompted them to do it, to include Ukraine. If there had not been NATO expansion, seeking to draw Ukraine into NATO. There wouldn't be a war in Ukraine today. It's as simple as that. As simple as that.
Wir sprachen vorhin über die Kriegstüchtigkeit der deutschen Bevölkerung. Wie sieht es da diesbezüglich in den USA aus? Eine aktuelle Studie der unabhängigen Organisation American Security Project schlägt Alarm, dass mittlerweile 68% der aktiven Militärangehörigen übergewichtig seien oder sogar an Fettleibigkeit leiden. Die verschiedenen Abteilungen des US-Militärs würden zudem ihre Rekrutierungsziele verfehlen. Nach offiziellen Daten des Pentagons seien mittlerweile überhaupt nur noch 1/4 der jungen US-Amerikaner zwischen 17 und 24 Jahren geeignet für den Militärdienst. Wie ist es um die Zukunft des US-Militärs bestellt? Können die USA auf dieser Grundlage noch dauerhaft als Weltgendarm auftreten?
You know, I was a Marine, and I'll tell you right now that the Marines are meeting their recruiting objectives. We're filling our ranks with fit boys who are ready to kill. So if you think you could take on America, you got to go through the Marine Corps first, and you ain't never going to get through the Marine Corps. But behind the Marine Corps is the Army, and the Army is fat and soft and slovenly, and they can't fight. They can't even meet their recruiting goals. I think they set last year a recruiting goal of 60,000 necessary just to sustain the force structure they have. They're 15,000 short. 15,000 is a lot of guys. That's like a division and a half that we aren't putting out there, which means that on paper, we have forces out there that don't have the manpower now to fill them. We're shrinking it. So, and we have to change our standards. We, of course, being the Army, not the Marine Corps. We never change our standards. You either are lean, mean, and green and ready to kill for your country. You don't join the Marine Corps. All other fat people join the Army. And I'm being facetious here, but it's true. The Army is full of obese people that don't know how to fight. Now, there's some guys in there, but again, we're talking about the team. The team is only as good as their weakest member. And in the United States Army, the weakest member is some obese fat boy who can't run 3 miles, who can't carry heavy weights, who had to get, waivers on after waiver after waiver just to get recruited. You're not doing anybody any favors by bringing this quality of soldier into the ranks. We've also, America, we forgot what the military is about. It's not meant to be a reflection of society. In America, we can have this discussion about diversity and inclusivity and, transgendered rights and homosexual rights. And we should have that because that's what America's about, freedom of the individual. But if you're having that discussion in the military, you're going to die. It's as simple as that. I can guarantee you they're not having those discussions in the Russian infantry squad that's getting ready to come in and fight you. And if we're worried about how we're going to bring in this transgendered lieutenant and what's going to happen with the sexual tension between the 3 homosexuals in 3rd Squad and how the all-female fire team over here is going to perform, and we're going to all be dead because they're going to come in, they're going to kill us because we forgot how to fight and we're worried about the wrong things. We're worried about being a reflection of society. The other thing is that Americans, those who are physically fit enough to fight, what are they fighting for? As much as I criticize Germany about this, in America, we do fly the flag. We do say USA, USA, but it's very superficial. It's very superficial. It helps sell tickets to NASCAR. So if you're into stock car racing, you can say USA, USA, fly the flag, and tickets get sold. You can sell a lot of really cheap, bad beer. Pabst Blue Ribbon is big. Budweiser, not Bud Light. They had a problem there. But you can sell, you might even be able to sell Schmitz. Who knows? But, you have a certain class of people like to drink beer. They like to go to NASCAR, and all, but they don't want to fight for an America that is embracing things they don't believe in. That's part of the internal dynamic right now. There's a large part of America, especially that part that, traditionally provides the manpower for the military, that has lost faith in what America is, and they're not willing to sign up and go to war on behalf of a country that they don't believe reflects their values. So America's got a real problem. That same study you mentioned said that America, in order to be a power in the world today, we need to restore our ability to fight 2 wars simultaneously, fight and win 2 wars. This is going to require us to increase the size of our conventional forces, increase the size at a time when we can't meet the demands of the current force. Again, the Army is 15,000 short. I think the Air Force is 10,000 short. The Navy's 5,000 short. The only force that isn't short is the Marine Corps, because we kept our standards and we refused to yield. And people still look at the Marine Corps and say, those guys are ready to fight and win. But everybody else they look at and they say, I mean, when the Army's recruiting poster, recruiting commercial has to touch in on, same-sex marriages, that has nothing to do with going to war. And the second they do that, whatever they gained from that, they lost with people walking away. Again, I'm not anti-gay, the last thing in the world I am. I'm not anti-transgender, last thing in the world I am. But I do understand war and what's needed to fight war, and you can't sit here and have social debates. It's just like, when back in the civil rights days, when black and whites were fighting in the streets, you can't bring that into the military. There's a reality in the streets about American social dysfunction, but if you bring that in the military, we can't fight. And we saw that in Vietnam, where the military started to fracture into, segregated aspects. The military had to fight hard to overcome that. So in the military is one of the few places where you can honestly say race wasn't a factor for the most part. I mean, again, it always is a factor. The officer ranks tend to be heavily weighted towards whites because of college education, But in the enlisted ranks, where it was generally seen as everybody's on the same playing field, there wasn't race. There was rank. It was a meritocracy. It didn't matter what color you were. If you could do your job, you got the rank, you were given the position, etc. That's the way it's supposed to be. We overcame the racial dysfunction of American society. We need to have that same standard today. It doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is, whatever. You have to meet a standard, and if you can't meet the standard, then you can't serve. This is the reality. America is not going to be able to. If we can't recruit an additional 150,000, 200,000 men to meet a 2-war requirement, when we can't recruit 15,000 to meet the current requirement, we have some real problems, and it reflects on the diminished combat capacity of the United States.
Vielen Dank, Scott, wie immer, für deine aufschlussreichen Analysen. Wir freuen uns schon auf nächste Woche. Dankeschön.
Bye-bye.
Liebe Zuschauer, auch an euch herzlichen Dank fürs Zusehen. Wenn euch die Sendung gefallen hat, dann teilt das Video doch bitte breit in den sozialen Medien. Abonniert eben noch unseren Kanal Gegenpol, folgt uns unbedingt auch auf unseren anderen Plattformen Odyssey und X, ehemals Twitter. Und vor allem, wenn ihr mal Fragen habt, die wir unbedingt an Scott Ritter stellen sollen, dann schreibt sie uns doch in die Kommentare. Ich freue mich auf euch, eure Monique.